Welcome back to The Full View. Well, the new chair of the SADC Organ on Defence, Politics and Security in Zambia is in Lesotho to ease tensions after opposition parties pulled out of the reforms dialogue. Opposition parties are protesting the suspension of Chief Justice Nthomeng Majara by the King with the advice of the Prime Minister. The reforms are expected to restore stability in Lesotho, but the facilitation team is actually concerned now that the latest developments are actually going to derail the process. Well, Zambia High Commissioner to South Africa and Lesotho, Emmanuel Mwamba, spoke to SABC Reporter Nthakoana Ngatane and said that the Facilitator Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke is expected in Lesotho tomorrow.
We have the SADC Prevention Mission in Lesotho. It's been here for over a year. There's a SADC mediation team led by the Facilitator, which is South Africa. We've been doing very well assessing and the preparation for the upcoming dialogue. There are many things we're doing to ensure that Lesotho returns to peace, restores itself to peace, and that becomes a good community of SADC. So far they've done well. They've done tremendous work towards building that restoration of peace and confidence in the matters of security of Lesotho.
But of course, we understand that this past week the opposition has pulled out of those talks, citing the suspension of the Chief Justice, saying that it is interference with the rule of law as well as the independence of the judiciary. Are you considering this as a team?
Yes. We'll be conducting various shuttle diplomacy between the various parties involved. I am aware that the government officials were at the United Nations General Assembly. They were away, so because now they've returned, I think we'll begin this engagement. It's an ongoing matter. You have to shuttle between the various demands by various parties and stakeholders.
Are you not worried this will affect the process itself?
It's of great concern. That's why we are here regularly.
And if you can just give us a sense of the role that Zambia in particular is playing in this SADC mediation team?
First of all, Zambia has just taken over the chair of the organ by President Edgar Lungu is now chair of the organ on defense, politics and security. From Angola, we've just taken over from Angola. We have two officials that have since been appointed to head the mission. We have a Brigadier General Kazembe, and we have our former Chief Justice Martin Ngulube, who's heading the SADC facilitation team, who work with Judge Moseneke, who's from South Africa, on these issues. So that is our role, doing it on behalf of the President, who's chair of the organ, and on behalf of SADC.
Well, we are now joined by our reporter Nthakoana Ngatane. She now joins us in studio. A very good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. Firstly, let's just have a look around the context of the political instability that is taking place in Lesotho.
Well, Shante, the political instability in Lesotho dates back to 1998, when the electoral model of the country was changed, and then the elections happened in 2002, then 2007. 2012 was when the country had its first coalition government. It didn't even last 2 years. And that government, then the country then went to elections in 2015, and then another government came on, only lasted 2 years, and then we saw elections again in 2017. Now, since then, during that time, we saw the killing of 2 army commanders in that country. But of course, SADC then recommended that it is necessary for Lesotho to go through constitutional, security sector, public sector, as well as judicial reforms to ensure that it doesn't experience this instability that seems to be happening time and time again. Now, you know that when SADC met at its last summit in Namibia, it said that it had had enough of the instability in Lesotho. The standby force in that country would be pulled out in October. You know that then Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, now President, was facilitator for Lesotho throughout that time. He has now appointed former retired Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke to be facilitator for Lesotho. He was upbeat that the parties had come to the table to go through the reforms, to hold a dialogue. But it appears now that with the suspension of the Chief Justice last week, it has brought the talks to a halt. And so SADC is going in again to see what they can do.
Yeah. Now, we know that the political parties have pulled out of those reform talks that were actually put in place to restore stability. What are some of the reasonings behind that?
Well, from what they're saying, the main reason is the suspension of the Chief Justice, because when the Chief Justice was suspended about 2 weeks ago, we saw judicial officers from around the world who were meeting in Australia from the Commonwealth, the judicial officers from Africa, condemning that move, saying that the government is interfering with the rule of law in the country. We saw Amnesty International issue a statement to say that Lesotho was undermining the independence of the judiciary. But of course, the government has come out to say that the Prime Minister who advised the King to suspend the Chief Justice acted within his rights, within the Constitution. But of course, all of these issues again go back to whether or not the constitution in that country should be changed, and this is why we're here.
Yeah, and now we do understand, which you've also just mentioned, Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke is now being appointed facilitator. What sort of change and dynamic do we think that he's going to be bringing to this context?
Let's take the fact that he is a law officer. In other words, he knows, he is an expert at law. So while we had Deputy President and then President Cyril Ramaphosa as facilitator, he had other issues that he had to deal with in his capacity as Deputy President and as President now. So you will understand that while he may have been qualified, he had other issues that were on his table. So perhaps the retired Deputy Chief Justice has more time on his hands, but also he is an expert in terms of if Lesotho has to go to constitutional reforms, what is it that it needs to do within the legal framework of the country in order for those reforms to happen properly for the country to reach stability again.
Definitely. We thank you very much for your time this evening. SABC's reporter Nthakoana Ngatane giving more context on the Lesotho peace talks that have said to have derailed. Some other news this evening: Zambia's refusal to grant Professor Patrick Lumumba entry has raised suspicions that the country is clamping down on anti-China sentiment. But Zambia's High Commissioner to South Africa, Emmanuel Mwamba, says the country is not concerned about Lumumba's opinions. Professor Lumumba, who delivered one of the